Welcome to the Department of Life Sciences podcast for Women at Imperial Week 2026. International Women's Day 2026 centres on the theme Give to Gain, the idea that progress happens when we intentionally give respect, voice, care, knowledge, opportunities, and resources to others. In a university community, that giving doesn't only apply in lecture theatres or laboratories. It happens in offices, technical spaces, meetings, emails, and everyday interactions that keep the system running. We're bringing together voices from across the Department of Life Sciences, from administration, technical teams, research, and teaching, to reflect on what giving has meant in their working lives and what we can all gain when equity and support are shared responsibilities. In this episode, we are joined by Paida. Paida, could you tell us a little about your role at Imperial and a fun fact?
My name is Paida. I'm a postdoctoral research associate at Imperial College, working in the Life Sciences department. And I work on a fairly big project that looks at wheat and the soil microbiomes that help suppress a fungal pathogen. Something interesting about fun fact. Well, I guess a fun fact would be that a teaspoon of soil has more than 1 billion bacterial cells in it. That usually gets people fascinated with my job when I tell them that.
Fascinating. So, what motivated you to pursue a career in the field that you are looking at, but also as a postdoc?
Well, my interest started off when I wanted to be a forensic scientist. That was when I was still a kid. I was very fascinated with the whole concept of DNA and how it can give us answers. And as I carried on with school and I went to university, I then just chose microbiology because that brought me closest to working in the lab. And while doing that, I discovered that I really do enjoy research. And it just so happened that the supervisor that I had at the time he still does actually do a lot of work with underutilized legumes or legumes that grow in very poor soils. And that's really piqued my interest. And I've been working around sustainable agriculture and improving agricultural practices since then. So that's what carried me through, bringing me to Imperial, where there was this very exciting project that was looking at developing microbiomes, engineering microbiomes to suppress the fungal pathogen that affects wheat in the UK, which is one of the most important cash crops in the UK. So it felt more like a challenge in the beginning, but that got me excited.
Good. So how has that been then, coming to the UK and doing research that different from, say, where you studied your PhD?
So I started my PhD, or all my degrees, in Namibia, which is home to the oldest desert in the world. So you can imagine the very stark difference in climate. We're coming from a very hot and dry climate to a very rainy and damp climate. That has been quite challenging, especially going into the field, because that was a huge part of my job. I had to go out in the field, meeting farmers and collecting soil and wheat samples. So that was probably the most exciting part of my job when I was starting off, because the farmers were very interested in the research, which I wasn't sure about, because farmers are known to tend to be stuck in their ways people. They don't want to change much, and if it's not broken, then don't fix it. But they were quite interested and curious, and the idea was, okay, if you can find a cheaper way, an easier way of me doing this, I'm really interested. I want to take part. So it was refreshing to meet people who are, I guess, socially known to not be too keen on changing things or exploring or trying different things, to receive a very positive interaction with them. And that was quite interesting for me, because I have always looked at my research as a key to interact with people, because the way I look at research is to serve people, because it's quite useless to me as an applied microbiologist to develop all of these systems that no one really can use. So seeing the interest from the farmer's perspective, that was probably the best part. Well, that is probably the best part, though.
Yeah, it sounds like, you have a real passion for the translational aspect of research. And thinking about translational stuff and giving, this year's International Women's Day theme is Give to Gain. And I would quite like to hear your thoughts about this. So when you hear that theme, what does that mean to you?
It took a while to actually fully understand that and comprehend it, because I'm thinking, oh, okay, am I just giving someone something, expecting something in return? But when I kept thinking about it and thinking about the theme, I realized that perhaps I'm actually just really a selfish person, because the way I see it, um, it's it's of no benefit to me if everything's okay on my end, but the next person, they're lacking in some way. So when I look at my research and the translational part of it, the idea is to feed the world. So looking at the population, the way it's growing, and the challenges that are in agriculture, the loss in arable land, and the other challenges from chemical fertilizers, for example, that are actually degrading the soils, all of this knowledge, if I could contribute something using my research to improving these systems, then the farmers gain, the people gain. And when everyone else benefits from that, it means we have more people who are healthy. We have more people with access to good food. We have more farmers who are actually able to use their land. So if I can, hopefully, this is only but a hope, if I can give a piece of my research or my knowledge to the world, I would like to gain the satisfaction to know that it has actually helped people. So, yeah, for me, it's a little selfish, but I'm hoping that through research, I can actually help people better.
I'd quite like to know about a time maybe when somebody has given you support or given you flexibility or trust or an encouragement that maybe made a real difference to you.
This is quite an interesting question. So, as I mentioned before, I work in a fairly large project, 5 PIs, 5 postdocs. So it means there are a lot of minds working, great minds working at the same time. And it's very easy to feel overwhelmed sometimes. Especially, I'll say for me, it's quite true for me. I've felt overwhelmed sometimes, and imposter syndrome did not waste any time to pop up. And there were times where I felt more frustrated with myself than anything else, than anyone else, than the experiments I was running. But thankfully, I have an amazing line manager who's been very, well, quite instrumental with not only the move to the UK, but with my research. And he's been a great guide in bringing my mind back to the work. But I would, I feel like it would not be sufficient to not mention the female PIs in my group in the project, because I've always had male supervisors, and I didn't quite have anyone to be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and I'm not sure if I'm really inadequate or what. Like, I need guidance with this, and the female PIs in our team have been instrumental in actually helping me navigate um, the research field as a female, and I guess as an expat as well. So they've been very comforting, I will say, but they've also given me amazing guidance on, like, okay, listen, what you're feeling is not unusual, and no, you're not an imposter. And it has helped me to not only tackle challenges better, but to actually understand them better. Like, it clears up the clog in my mind and gets rid of the fog. And it has been extremely helpful to have that opportunity or the space to actually comfortably walk up to them and say, I'm struggling a little bit, and I would love an ear to listen to what I have going on.
I think that's a really nice story of the importance of just having space to speak, having space to
Yeah.
have people listen to you, sort of developing on from that. How has that maybe changed the way that you see your role or see your place in the department?
I would say definitely more confident. I've become more confident in my abilities, and I feel more confident to help others, especially students, when they come up and say, "We've got this issue," even if it's just something in the lab. I feel more confident that just as much as someone else has been put in a position to help me or to guide me or to advise me, I am also in a position to help someone else. So I would say the number one thing has been confidence to actually stand on my own as a researcher and to establish, I guess I should say, yeah, to establish my role to be useful to others around me, just as others have been useful to me.
Nice. And thinking about that a little bit more, just wondered in your immediate team, what are some of the ways
Mhm.
that you really try and give back to others?
I do like having an open communication system within the team because we're all working on different angles in the project. I found that sometimes in academia, people try to get things done without actually getting the task addressed. So people sometimes, not always, sometimes might just look at a task, okay, I need to do this, and they just tackle that without actually um, looking at it from, from outside in, and instead of just, having blinders to address the challenge. But I found that bringing in the team and having a separate I guess, platform for just the postdocs and the support staff within the team has been quite helpful because we can all just come together and say, okay, the senior staff need us to do this. Is there a way we can achieve it as a team more efficiently instead of giving individual tasks like you do this, you do that? But okay, can we all just come together and address this together and have more brain? Two heads are better than one is kind of like what I go with. And I think the team would say I've been quite vocal about that in how we're getting things done at work.
Good. And these are all great things to be doing. And one of the key things that I would like to talk about really is like, how do these hidden contributions, how should they be recognized? And are they recognized within your team?
Well, the PIs are amazing. I have to give it to them. They're amazing, and they have always been very vocal about our work, both the good and when we're having challenges. And they've been extremely helpful. But in addition to that, they are just as vocal when we get it right. And sometimes you need validation that you're getting it right when, especially when we are struggling. And I have to say, our PIs have been instrumental in helping us feel confident about the work that we're doing. Because so often you meet a challenge, you have a challenge, you're trying to figure it out, and you eventually get it right, but you're still not sure, and you start second guessing yourself. But our PIs have always been quick to say, "You got it right. Well done." And I think it might seem small, but to me, I find it extremely valuable because it's sometimes just the validation we need. It's that one thing that's stopping you from packing up your laptop and just chucking it across the across the room. Um, and and I think that has been just the thing, in my perspective, that has kept us going.
Great. So it's the kind of small, motivational, encouraging, you're doing a good job, keep going. Now, a bit reflective, I guess. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ask for help sooner. I've always been an independent person, and I've always tried to find a solution on my own. And I mean, in research where it's obviously driven by collaboration, it doesn't quite work well. So for a very long time, even before I got my PhD and started my postdoc, at school, primary, high school, I've always tried to find a solution on my own. And sometimes that meant hours just circling around the same problem. And in hindsight, I probably wasted a lot of time trying to figure it out on my own. And I would tell myself, ask for help sooner. Try it the first time. If it doesn't work, try it again. If it doesn't work, regroup. But at that point, ask for help and say, okay, I'm going to try this new thing. But if it doesn't work, I need help trying to figure it out. Um, I can't tell you why I've always been like that, but um, I would say ask for help sooner because there are always people willing to help. And that has actually pushed me now to always want to help others because someone else helped me and, they made things easier.
Great. That's a really motivational. And that kind of brings me to my last question, which is a bit more speculative. If you could speak to the powers that be, whether that is in the department, in the faculty, at Imperial, or even the wider academic community, what's something that you would change considering this theme of give to gain?
So the academic world is not small by any means. There are a lot of researchers out there, and it's a very big community that is doing amazing work. I'll have to say that first. They're doing amazing work. But I feel like there are gaps in place. Oh, not that they were placed deliberately, but there are gaps between early careers, early career researchers and established researchers or tenure positions. There's a gap where postdocs or master's students or PhD students are not quite sure how to progress to the next stage. There are a lot of resources at Imperial, for example, on how to apply for funding and all of that. But I feel like they still need there's need for more support when it comes to navigating the corporate side of academia. We tend to think if this doesn't work, then I'm going to go into industry. But there's still a lot of people who need to be trained in research. There's still a lot of research that needs to happen. There are a lot of knowledge gaps that need to be addressed. But there are a lot of frustrations around surrounding funding, for example. And I feel like there is need to increase awareness on how to tackle those gaps, how to bridge those gaps. How can we reduce anxiety for a PhD student, for example, who's about to submit, but they don't know whether they're going to do a postdoc or not, and they feel like, have I wasted the last 3 or 4 years because they haven't secured funding, for example? There has to be another way of navigating it instead of just pumping them with resources or courses on how to apply for funding. Not to say that is bad, but there is more that can be done. We are researchers. We can figure it out. We can come up with a solution. That's what I think. And if I were to say anything to the powers that it may be, it'll be that. There has to be something else that we can do.
And what a fantastic way to end. Thank you, Paida, for being on this podcast. I hope you have enjoyed speaking to me and having this conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I think I'm going to do a whole lot more reflecting from this conversation, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. And thank you for having me.